Okay, so welcome back everyone to the final workshop that we are doing, and at the end of today's workshop we'll be having a game that we can play and we can share with others, so that's very exciting. Let's recap what we have at the moment. So we have the game we can play with our player, and we were working on the UI system for our game. So we have the pause menu. So when we click escape on the keyboard, the game will pause and the menu will appear, and then we resume. If we resume the game, the menu will disappear. And we added a little text for displaying the ammo of our player. And so we're going to write some code to make that text actually work. So here we're going to make a reference to the text that we have created here, ammo text. So in our player code, here I'm going to make a public because we have to make a reference in the Unity editor. And it is tmp text, and I'll call it ammo text. And in our update, I'm just going to, so we want the ammo text to display the number of ammo or bullets left in our player, right? So in our update, just say ammo text dot text equals to and will be a string ammo, and then we can concatenate this string with the actual number of ammo. And because it is an integer, we have to convert it to a string. And that is very simple. And we also want a text for the number of health that we have in our player. So we have ammo and we have health. So let's do that right now. It's basically the same process. So text health text. Health and concatenate the string to string. Save that and go back into Unity. So we have the ammo text, and so of course we have to create the health text and then refer to it in the script. So let's wait for it to reload and we can create the text. So because I am too lazy to create a new text, I'm just going to duplicate this ammo text and then reposition it. So select the text, Control D on the keyboard to duplicate it, and I'm going to rename it to health text and change the text here, health. And so in our player script, we have ammo text. I think, yeah, we have to make it public in order for it to show up in the, in the Unity editor. So change that to public, go back into Unity, and we should see ammo text and health text, and where we can drag and drop our text into the reference here. So yes, health and ammo. So just drag and drop them in. And if we, so the health is now on top of our ammo text, which is not what we want. I want the health text to be at the top right corner of the screen. So we're gonna do the same thing that we did with like the positioning of the ammo text. Is we're going to click this button here, hold Alt on the keyboard to set the position, and I'm going to click the top right button here. Hit that, and so the text is now actually positioned on the top right, but it's not looking right. So if we go into our scene view and select the health text, you see that the text itself is actually positioned on the top right, but the alignment of the text is right aligned. So that's why it's not looking right. So I'm just going to change it to right align. It was previously left align. So change it to right align, and it should look great. So let's play this and see what we get. So we got ammo, and when we shoot, yep, you can see that the ammo text reflect the number of bullets. And I'm going to try to take some damage. You can see that the health text also reflects some. Okay, that's great. Now, so when in our code here, we have here that when we're checking when our health reaches 0, the player will die. Basically, we call the game over function from game controller, and we destroy our player. So in game controller and game over, we set the game over menu active. But in the Unity, we don't have game over menu yet. So let's create that real quick. So again, I am too lazy to create a new menu. I'm going to duplicate the pause menu and call it game over menu. And in here, so once the game is over, we want the player to either restart the game or quit the game. So we're going to have a restart button instead of resume, restart. And yes, the text will display game over instead of paused. Game over, like this. Restart, and of course we have to change the text of the button itself. So restart. Okay, so we have the game controller and we have a reference to our game over. So let's drag and drop our game over menu to game controller script, and now we have a reference. But this restart button, it doesn't work yet. So let me here a button. So on click, we're calling game controller dot resume, which is not what we want, right? We want to restart the scene. We don't want to resume the game. So let's go into our code and let's make a function to restart the scene. So how do we, well, first of all, let's create a function. So public void restart. And how do we restart a scene? Well, we're going to be using some namespace, well, one namespace just for scene like management. So using Unity engine dot scene management. And so let's see here. So to restart a scene, I think we just call scene manager dot load scene. Yeah. So scene manager load scene, and in here it takes a string of scene name. So what is a string? A scene name. Well, if we go into Unity here, you can see that we have our scene, and our scene name is right up top here, main game. So we just have to put it in the argument as a string and main game. Make sure you spell it right. I think I do. And go back into Unity, wait for it to reload. And now we're going to change the method from resume to restart. And when we'll click on this button, we can now restart the scene. So let's go here, restart button, change from resume to restart. There we go. And all right, so that's our UI. I think let's play the game and test out our game over menu, because I think we have some error and we actually destroy the player, and see what the error is. So so the game over menu doesn't actually disable when we first played the game, so that's something that we need to fix. So let's go into start here. Yeah, So here we disable the pause menu, but we also need to disable the game over menu. So let's do the same thing. Game over menu set active to false. And if you look here in our Unity editor, so previously we're getting some errors when our player actually destroyed, and the error is coming from trail follow update. So if we go to trail follow script, and see that basically this script, what it does, it is set the trail position to our player position, but because when the player die, we destroy our player object, this player position here, it becomes null, so that's why it returns an error. So here I'm just going to do a quick no check. So if player is null, we can just return. Save that, save this, and go back into Unity. And now we should get rid of these errors here when we play the game. And done. Let's play the game and see. Alright, so I have a player here. I'm going to take some damage and see what is the behavior when we actually die. Okay, so there we go. We have our game over and we have a restart and exit button. If I click on restart, we restarted the scene. We have full ammo and full health. Perfect. So now we have a way to shoot, and we have a way to deal damage to our player, but we need our player to somehow regain some health or ammo if we want the game to last very long, because if the player can only shoot 20 bullets and have 5 health, then that would be a pretty short game. So we're going to add some collectible objects, and these collectible objects will spawn when an enemy dies. So basically we shoot an enemy die, and then it drops some basically loot or objects that we can collect. So let's add first some ammo collectible. So we're going to do right click on the hierarchy and create let's create a sprite, and I'm going to just click square for now and call it ammo collectible. Is it collectible or collectible? I don't know. Anyway, let's reset the position to 0 and let's go into our scene view and see we have a object here. Right, so because we selected square when we created the object, it has a square sprite, but we want to apply our own sprite. So go into our project, under sprites, other, we have ammo. So let's drag and drop that onto the sprite renderer and change the sorting layer to objects to make sure it renders in front of the background. And we have our ammo collectible. So in order for the player to actually collect this, collectible, we need a way to determine whether the player has collided with the collectible or not. So basically, remember how when we run our player into an enemy, we don't actually go through an enemy, they collide physically, right? But in here, we don't want that. What we actually want is a sort of trigger collision. So let me just add that. So it's the same way that you add a normal collision. So let's go select our ammo collectible and add a component. And what we want is a box collider. select box collider. So, okay, that looks pretty good. And in here, you see we have a checkbox for is trigger. And if we check this, actually, if we leave this unchecked, and let's try to play the game with this unchecked, and we're going to run our player into this collectible and see what happens. So, let's play, and whoops, you see that? So they physically like collide with each other, which is not what we want. What we want is if we check this is trigger checkbox, basically there will be no physical collision between the two objects. So if player run into our ammo collectible, they will not physically collide, but we can check whether they are colliding with each other, like not physically, but whether the two colliders are touching each other. Okay, that sounds kind of weird, but so yeah, check that is trigger. And now what we want to do is we want to check if the player has run into that collectible, right? And remember how we have a player and we have a player tag so that the bullet can detect whether it hits the player or it hits the enemy. So in here, we're also going to have a tag for ammo collectible so that we can detect whether we run into an ammo collectible or not. So let's here and going to add a tag. Ammo collectible and save. And added a tag, let's assign that tag. Perfect. So now we're going to go into our script here, and in our player movement script, so how do we detect whether a player has collided, not physically collided, but trigger collided with our collectible? Well, remember in our bullet we have a void on collision entered 2D. Well, we'll also have the same, not the same thing, but a similar thing for trigger. So so we're going to have an event function, which is something that will be called by Unity, called let's see, on trigger enter 2D, and it will take a argument of collider 2D other. And so this function is very, very similar to what we have in our bullet when we detect collision with other objects. But here it detects trigger collision instead. So what we want to do here is we want to compare the tag of this other object here. So let's use a let's use a if statement. So if and in here other dot we have a function called compare tag. So this basically, like, it will return true if it has the same tag as what we pass in as a string here. So ammo collectible. So this basically compare whether the tag of this other object is the same as this string here. Make sure you spell it right. I think I do. Ammo collectible. Yeah. So what do we do when we run into an ammo collectible? Well, we want to add some ammo to our player. So let's say ammo +5, right? So when we run into that, we're going to +5 to our ammo. And we'll just destroy the ammo collectible because, we destroyed the other object. So basically, save this. When our player, collide trigger collide with our ammo collectible here, we'll just add the ammo to our player and then destroy this collectible. So let's test this out. And go to game view and play. So I'm going to run into the collectible and see whether we added some ammo or not. So here, run into here, and we see that our ammo is now 25 instead of 20, and the ammo collectible has disappeared. So that works. And we also want to do the same thing for health. So I'm too lazy to do the whole process again, so I'm going to duplicate ammo collectible, and here I'm going to call it health collectible here, and we change the sprite to the health sprite that we have in our sprites, and we also want to change the tag. So here we're going to add another tag. It will be health collectible and assign the tag health collectible. And of course we're going to need some scripts to check for that. So else if and other compare tag. So this time we want to compare to health collectible. And for health we only want to add 1, so plus. And of course we will also destroy other game objects. Save that, go into Unity. So now when I run into the ammo collectible, we will add some ammo and destroy it. When I run into the health, it will add some ammo, we will add some health, and we will also destroy it. Perfect. Now we don't want to just have these two lying around. What we want is run some enemies, and when we destroy the enemies, they will spawn in, right? So of course, for any kind of spawning, we will save these two objects as prefabs so that we can spawn them later. So in our assets here, I'm going to go to prefabs. We have bullet and enemy. Now let's save ammo collectible and health collectible as prefabs. So I'm just going to drag and drop ammo collectible in. It turns blue, and we have a new prefab. Do the same thing with health collectible. Turns blue, and we have a prefab. So now I can safely delete these two things from our scene because we already have the prefabs. So now we want to actually spawn them in when the enemy dies. So let's go to our enemy script here. So see, when the enemy die, we destroy the enemy itself. But now we also want to spawn the collectibles. So in here, oh right, first we need to make the references to the collectibles themselves. So here, let's make public game object ammo collectible prefab and public game objects health collectible prefab. Great. So now in our so when the enemy is we should here. So when the enemy die, we spawn a new collectible. So how do we spawn a new thing, a new object in Unity? Well, we do the same thing that we do with like shooting, is instantiate. So let's instantiate. So we will instantiate a new ammo collectible prefab. And so where do we actually instantiate this object? Well, we can do at the position of our enemy, but to make it a little bit more dynamic, I'm going to Basically, so say a player, let's see, a player is here. So I'm going to spawn it at somewhere around here. So I'm going to like randomize the position a little bit. So let's go to here and say transform position plus. Now here is the part where we sort of randomize it. So new vector 2, and it will be like the x will be random, range between -2 and 2, -2 and 2, and y will also be random, range between -2 and 2. Right, so let's see, right, so we'll convert position to vector 2, and we also need a rotation when we spawn a new object. And for rotation, I'm just going to say turn identity, which basically means the default rotation. And so now we can spawn an ammo collectible. I'm just going to copy this line because we're going to spawn a health collectible prefab. Health collectible prefab. Save that. Yeah. And let's go into Unity, wait for it to reload, and well, we're going to like assign the reference in our enemy. So if we click on the enemy prefab, we can actually like edit its components in our inspector. So let's collect this. You can see that we have two new fields: ammo collectible prefab and health collectible prefab. So I'm going to just drag and drop them in. Health collectible prefab. Perfect. And that should be it. If I play the game right now, I should be able to collect some, collectibles when I kill an enemy. So let's try that. Let's wait for an enemy to spawn. I'm going to try to kill him, and there we go. We have some collectibles, and I ran into them. They added to my stats. Perfect. And when I die, there's no errors anymore. We have a game over, and we can restart. Perfect. So that looks pretty good. That is basically our game. I also want to add a little score system. So basically, when we shoot and kill an enemy, I want to add a little bit of I want to add some score to the game to make it a little bit more fun. So let's do that. In our player here, I'm just going to make an integer and score. And we don't have a maximum score, but we do have some text to display the score. So tmp text score text. Perfect. And we actually want to make this public, because when an enemy dies here, we want to add the score. So we already have a reference to a player here. So we instantiate here, and we can just say player dot score plus equals, say, 100. Right. So whenever an enemy dies, we'll add 100 score to a player. And of course, we need to update the score text to reflect that. So score text equals to score plus score dot string to string. Perfect. So Whoops, I think I forgot to save the other scripts. Yeah, so remember to save every script. Let's go back into Unity here. And well, if you have noticed, we don't actually have a score text yet. So we're just going to create that in the UI here. So wait for it to load and we will create that text. Done. So I'm going to be lazy again and I'm going to duplicate the health text, name it score text, and I'm going to change the position of my text. This time I want it to be top center. So click this and top center, perfect. And of course, change that to score 0. And let's see. And I want it to align at the center. So change alignment to center. And have our score text. In our player, we made a reference to score text, but we need to assign it. So drag and drop that in. And now we have some score when we kill an enemy. Perfect. Let me try that to see if it works. Alright, let me shoot. There we go. We have 100 scores, 200 scores, 300. Perfect. So that is basically our game. That is a fully functional game that we can build and we can play, we can share with other people. So everything that we do beyond this point is something called like game polishing. So what is game polishing? Basically, like, you know how some game feels good to play while others don't, and the secret is at the polishing. And it's basically a way, it doesn't affect the actual gameplay, but it affects, say, the look of the game or the way it feels to play. So it is a pretty important part when you're making an indie game, especially. So what are some, popular techniques to improve game polish? Well, the first thing is called camera shake or screen shake. So let me show you by actually starting the game that we have. So like, you know how when I shoot or when I take some damage, the screen actually shake a little bit. Why doesn't the game start? Okay, it's here. So here, when I shoot, you can see that the screen actually like shakes a little bit just to emphasize the impact of the shot. So when I receive some damage, the screen also shake a little bit. So that's so that doesn't really affect the game itself, but it really adds to the feel of playing the game. So let's do that. So it's very simple. We're going to like randomize the position of the camera very little, and during like the shake duration, and when it stops we can just set the camera position back to its original position. So let's make a script just for camera shake. Now in Unity here, right click, create C# script, and I'm going to call it camera shake. And it creates a script. Go into our editor here, we should see camera shake. Perfect. Let me close some of these. So now we need, a function to actually shake the camera. So void, actually it will be public void shake, and we're going to need two parameters. One for the intensity of the shake and the other for the duration of the shake. So float intensity and float duration. So intensity means how hard should we shake this camera? Like, should it be like a little bit or should it be like crazy? And of course, duration is like how long should we shake the camera for? And we're going to make two variables to control that. So private float shake intensity and private float shake duration. And in here, I'm just going to set our variables. So shake intensity equals to intensity and shake duration equals to duration. So this function here is only for initiating the shake. We don't actually do any, setting position or anything in this function. We actually do that in update. So basically, when we set the shake duration here, say say 1 second. During that duration, we want to randomize the position of our camera. And when that duration ends, we set it back to the default position. So we say if shake duration is greater than 0, we want to shake, or we want to randomize position, right? And we want to decrease the shake duration. So equal time double time. And if our shake duration has ended, we just reset camera position, right? So okay, so first thing first, randomize position. So randomize position basically just set the actual position, and this camera shake script will be attached to the main camera itself. So so it will be attached to the main camera. So when I say transform that position, it will refer to the position of the camera. Here, say new vector 3, and so the x-axis will be randomized, right? And we will randomize within our shake intensity. So that is the x-axis. I'm going to copy this and do the same thing for the y-axis. But for our z-axis, we want it to be -10 because we always want the z-axis to be -10. So -10. And that is how we randomize the position of the camera. So reset camera position, very straightforward. We just say transform that position is new vector 3 0 0 -10, because our camera doesn't actually move when the shake duration ends. So save that and go back into Unity, wait for it to reload, and we're going to assign the script as a component to our main camera. And now we can call the shake method function to actually shake the camera. And so here, drag and drop our camera shake in as a script. It is there, perfect. Now we can say go into a player, and well, first of all, in order to call the shake function, we need a reference to our camera shake. So let's do that real quick. So public camera shake, and call it camera shake. So when do we want to shake our camera? When we say shoot a bullet, camera shake dot shake. And remember, we need 2 arguments for the shake method: intensity and duration. So intensity, I'm just gonna say 0.1 0.05 and duration is 0.1 second. That seems about right. When we take some damage, I'm going to shake the camera as well, but this time intensity should be 0.1, a little bit, more intense. And when the enemy takes some damage, we also want to shake the camera a little bit. So let's make a reference in our enemy script, make a reference to camera shake. Camera shake. Shake. And take some damage. Here, camera shake and 0.1 as well. So that's how we shake the cameras. And we go back into Unity, and so we made two references to camera shake in our player script and in our enemy script. So remember, we have to assign them in the editor. And so here in our player, we can drag and drop our camera in, but in our enemy, we can't actually do that. As we select our enemy, we can't actually drag and drop anything from our scene into a prefab. So we're going to need to make this reference a different way. So remember when we made the reference to our player by using find object of type play movement? Well, we can do basically the same thing with our camera shake. And for that reason, we don't need it to be public anymore. We can make it private. And here, in camera shake, we're going to find object of type, camera shake. Perfect. And now go back into Unity, and when the enemy script run, it will get the camera shake automatically. We don't have to assign it anymore. So let's run the game and see if we can notice the camera shaking effect. Run. Alright, so we have a game here. I'm going to try and shoot, and you can see that the camera does shake, very subtle, but we can see that it adds that little bit more juice in the way that the game feels to play. So that is one part of the polishing bit that we have for today. The next part will be post-processing effects. Alrighty, welcome back everyone. I hope we all had a good break. Unity and OBS just crashed right before we just break. I guess that's a good thing, because I can actually have it open right now. So anyway, so let's talk about post-processing. So actually, before we can talk about like adding post-processing effects to our game, we need to talk about the package manager. So if we go into Unity here and go to Window, Package Manager. So what is the package manager? So you know how Unity is a very multi-functional application? So people use it for different purposes, right? Here we're using it for making 2D games, but there are people who use it to make 3D games, or people who use it to make animations, visual effects, and short movies, etc. So people use it for all kind of different stuff, and so the engine has to provide a lot of features for those usage. But if we put everything into the Unity editor like at once, it will be very heavy on the actual system, and a lot of time you only use it for one purpose and you just disregard everything else. So the package manager is a way of Unity basically break down the different functions of the application into different packages, and if you need it if you need something, you just get the package at, as opposed to you have everything at once. So when you open Package Manager, you would actually see this. So these are the packages that you have in your project, and these are all added automatically when we select the 2D templates. Remember way back when we were creating our project, we selected the 2D template, so it added all of these packages. So if you click on the top here and go to Unity Registry, so these are the packages, these are the functionalities that Unity themselves provide. So if you want to make like 3D games or movies, we have like visual effects and everything else here. But what we're interested in is post-processing. So by default, this package is actually not added by default. When you create the project, I actually added them beforehand, just to save us some time, because it will have to download some stuff and do some importing. So it's gonna take probably a few minutes. But so if you select post-processing, there'll be a button here. Instead of remove, it will say install, and just click install, and it will install the post-processing package in your project. So once you have that installed, I can close the package manager now, and we have the post-processing functionality in our game right now. We need to actually use it. So the first thing we want to do is in our camera, because this is what will render the post-processing. So what actually is post-processing? Well, if you've ever watched a movie or play a video game, and if you remember that movie or game very distinctly, there is a high chance that what you remember is because of that, like post-processing, like aesthetically, right? So I don't know. For example, if you remember like the movie The Matrix, if you think of that movie, the first thing you think of is the color green, because they use a very, very heavy green like color post-processing grading. So that's an example. So in our camera here, I'm going to add a component, and what we want to add is post-process layer. So click on that. It should add the post-process layer and the layer. So here we have the trigger, which is what the camera will be the object to receive the post-process effects, and what will be layer. So what exactly does layer mean? So here we have layers, the different layers here, default, transparent, etc., etc. And now we usually have a separate layer just for post-processing. So let's add a layer, and here we will say post-processing. I think I spelled that right. So go back into the main camera, and we select the post-processing post-processing layer. So what exactly do we do with this layer? Well, what I usually have is I create an empty object, and with that object is assigned to this post-processing layer, and it will contain the actual post-process like effects that we want to define. So let's create an empty object. Just going to call this post-processing, and let's reset it to 0, 0, and assign the post-processing layer. And this is where we will actually define the different effects that we want our camera to render. So here we're going to add the post-process volume. So let's add that. And in here is global. So this means like whether that post-processing will be applied to every scene or just this one. We only have one scene, so maybe, yeah, we can check that. And the profile. So say, you have like multiple scenes and you want to apply different effects in different scenes, we can have different profiles. So say one profile is, we want the color is very green, and another profile we have the color to very blue. So we can have multiple profiles that define the effects. Here we only have one, so we need a profile. So let's click this new button to create the profile. And I think it created the profile in here. So in the scene view, main game underscore profiles, and we see we have our post-processing profile. So now we can start, adding the different effects. So click this add effect and then Unity, and then we have the different effects here. Some of these effects are exclusively for 3D games. Some can be used for 2D, and I recommend, I'm not going to explain like what everything in here means, but you're welcome to like play around and see what it does, or you can go to the internet and see what exactly it means. So for example, I'm just going to add, say, color grading, and so here by default everything is unchecked, and if you want to apply an effect, you can check it and change the value. So if I slide the temperature down here, you see that the game is now very blue tinted, right? About that, why not? So that's how you can basically apply the different post-processing effects. And what I recommend is just go around all of these and just play around with them and see whether it works for your taste of the game or not. So let's say I'm gonna add a little vignette effect here and say, check the intensity and slide it up. So see, we have the little movie like vignette effect, something like that. So these effects are often like very subtle, but they add that little bit more like presentation sleek to the game, and makes it looks a little bit better, I think. So okay, so I went a little bit overboard with the effect, so it looks very blue, and the vignette effect is very intense. But that is how we add it. So that's how we add some effects, and we can add more, or can actually like here and remove an effect if you don't like it. And that should be it for our game. Now we created this game, but we don't have an executable yet, right? We can't expect everyone to have Unity and they can open the project and then play the game. We want to build our game into an executable that we can play as a standalone and share it with other people. So if we go to, I think, File, and then Build Settings, or Control-Shift-B, which is the shortcut I usually use. So Build Settings, we have this window here. And so the first thing that I recommend you look at is actually this button here, Player Settings. So if I click this, we are brought into the project settings. And this is where we can change, say, what is your name or the company you work for, what is the name of the game. By default, it will be the name of the project that you created. And we can have an icon and a cursor. So an icon is basically like when you have an icon on the desktop, that's what it is. And a cursor is the mouse cursor. When you play the game, what will it change to? So in here, I actually have some stuff for that, I have a cursor, so drag and drop that in. Right, so if we select cursor here, the texture type is sprite. We actually have a special type for cursor. So in here, select the drop down and select cursor. And now, and for the icon, I think I just added the ship icon. Let's see. Cursor. Oh, apply. You forget. Yeah, I always forget to change settings and I forget to apply. Anyway, that should be it. And there are some other like settings here, and for the most part, we don't really have to worry about them. Like their default should be good enough. Although for the resolution and presentation, like it default to full screen window. Well, I usually don't want it to open in full screen, so I usually just window and then change like the resolution to about like 720 or something. But if you want full screen, it's like that. And so now we could go, so once we have like the project settings configured, we can go to build settings. And in here, you see that we have the different platforms in here. So Unity can make game for Android, iOS, PlayStation, Xbox, etc. But we have the Windows, Mac, and Linux platform selected. And if you have if you have a Mac, you should probably see Mac here. And if you have Linux, you probably see Linux here. So we can build to those platforms. And Intel 64, yeah, that sounds about right. If you click build, it will bring up this file selector, and you actually need to select a folder for it to build to. So what I usually do is I create a new folder, and I usually call it build, or you can call it game, whatever. And in here you can click select folder and it will start building. I will not build a game right now because my computer might explode if I do that. Anyway, so that's how you build a game, and it will generally take about a few minutes if you're building for the first time. But if you're building for, say, the second time where you already have to build and you're building like overriding it, it will take like 30 seconds or less. So it's very fast. And once you build the game, I think you will have something like this. Let's sneeze. Let's see, workshop. So we have a build folder. This is for the sample project. And you have something like this, where you have some folders and some files that Unity need, and you have an exe file. And this is the file that you can execute and play the game. So this is the actual game itself. So yeah, that is it for the workshop. You have learned how to build a game, how to make it better, how to make it more polished, more beautiful, and how to actually build it into an executable. And you can actually share whatever you have created, and we're very excited to see what you have made. Thank you everyone for tuning in.